What's up, y'all? Welcome back to MMA Cannibal. We got some mid coming up this weekend from the UFC. And, thought I'd get some content out of it and create some prediction video for it. This is going to be most of the fights on the card. There's two on the card that I didn't really know anything about any of the fighters on it. So I just decided to save myself and all y'all that time and not act like I know anything about it. Without further ado, let me just get straight into these. Starting off, my first prediction is Josh Frem versus Andre Petroski. I've seen a lot of people picking Andre Petroski in this matchup. I was definitely initially thinking about going with Andre. There's a lot of reasons. Both these guys are pretty mediocre. So when it comes down to, mediocre skills, you start to look at things like, height and reach and power and things like that. Where if you look at the numbers, Fremd actually holds a lot of the advantages in those regards, being taller and lengthier than him. Petroski arguably has more power, but that only gets you so far. And I expect Fremd to be a bit more sound in his technique. Also, looking at the resumes, I value level of competition very highly. And Josh Fremd has been fighting much more impressive names, I guess you could say, throughout his UFC career. Petroski early on, right now he's coming off a 2-loss win streak to Jacob Malkoun and Michel Pereira, who are like probably the two highest level guys he's ever fought. And so now he lost to them both back to back. His real only notable win is Gerald Mearshart. Other than that, it's a kind of a bunch of nobodies who have also fought and beaten other nobodies. So they don't really do anything for him. Josh Fremd, on the other hand, though, obviously not some of the most impressive wins, but, Cedricus Dumas is not a bad win, necessarily. And Jamie Pickett, he's not great, but it's about the same level, if not a little bit better than most of Petroski's wins. And when you look at his losses, I feel like, there are a lot better losses to have than Petroski's, such as Roman Kopylov, Fluffy Hernandez in your UFC debut. I mean, it's just really what I'm looking at. I think Josh Fremd is maybe a little more high caliber, maybe. Even if it's not, next level. It's not a full step up. He's like a half step better, but that's what I'm going to go with. I'm going to pick Josh Fremd to just play this one a little bit safer. Be kind of slow, be a bit boring, not take too many shots from Petroski, and just kind of outpoint him a bit as the fight goes on. Moving on, we got Montel Jackson versus Damon Blackshear. This fight's actually pretty decently interesting just because I have a lot of high hopes for Damon Blackshear. Even if I haven't seen necessarily the most impressive game, from what I have seen, I have, just mostly hopes than anything else that I want him to succeed and do well. I think he could be a cool personality in the bantamweight division, and another guy who seems to have some sort of grappling and submission specialty, which would be cool to see in this division. Montel Jackson, not anything super special, but nothing to scoff at either. He's got some decent wins over guys like Ronnie Yaya and Julio Arce, who I don't necessarily rate super highly, but he is getting these wins, guys like JP Buys, but they don't really do a lot for me. And when, again, this fight is kind of a similar situation to the Frem Petroski one, where I'm looking at the competition more so than the guys themselves. Because you look at Damon and it's like, yeah, that twister win over Jose Johnson, not necessarily the most impressive win of all time outside of the fact that it's, only the third twister in UFC history. But to be able to make a 1-week turnaround right after that fight like he did, back to bantamweight again, and to go against Mario Bautista, who's one of those really highly touted bantamweight prospects at the moment. Not only did he take him to a decision, he didn't win, but he didn't look that bad either, especially given all the extenuating circumstances surrounding that fight. I thought it was a pretty good performance, and, it was definitely one of those things that makes you immediately catch, your eye right after the twister kind of moment. So I'm putting my chips on Damon Blackshear for this fight. I guess you could say I'm putting him on black. Please don't cancel me for that one. But yeah, I'm going to take Damon Blackshear. I'm going to take him by a decision. I do think Montel Jackson's going to be kind of a tough out. I don't think, he'll be able to just walk through him. I think the striking will give him a bit of a problem from Jackson. So I think, a good little 2-1 decision is what Damon could get out of this fight. Moving along, Jasmine Juda-vicious is taking on UFC debutant in Fatima Klein. I did a little bit of digging on Fatima Klein just so I could be a little more educated on this. She's 6-0. Did most of her career in Invicta, which is that like primarily women's. I think it's women's only MMA promotion that a lot of these WMMA fighters into the UFC are coming from. And she did decent. She seemed to do decently well there. 6-0, so it's not, it's a nice record. Certainly something to look at. But Jasmine Juda-vicious, she's one of those WMMA fighters that you actually remember the name of. And that alone tells me that I rate her. And when I look at her fights, nothing too impressive. She's not getting that many finishes. I think there's a little bit of a misconception about her being a finisher because she did submit Priscilla Cachoeira in her last fight. But, she's been staying very active. She had that fight. I forget when the Cachoeira fight was, but it was right after the Tracy Cortez fight, which was in September, the last UFC Noche. So she's been staying active, staying busy. This will be her second fight since her fight against Tracy Cortez, whereas in the main event, this is going to be Tracy's first fight since fighting Jasmine. So I like that activity. I like the fact that she's shown to be able to get finishes, although not often. She's shown to be able to. She's been in the UFC for a minute now. I trust all of these factors to get her a solid decision over Fatima Klein. I don't really take women's fights by finishes very often unless I'm pretty confident in it. So, submissions are possible here, especially since it looks like Klein's more of a kickboxing leaning fighter, but I'm going to stick with my decision pick. Moving along, Joshua Van and Charles Johnson. Another, kind of tough, unranked, unknown guy in Charles Johnson, similar to the Montel Jackson situation. This guy's been around for a while. And, win some, lose some. His record's not very impressive, and especially when you're looking at the win side of it, really no names to it. You look at the losses, a couple no names in there, but the losses also come to guys that have turned out to really go far in this division, such as Muhammad Mokaev and Brandon Royval, for example. And I feel like if you rate Joshua Van, if you think he has potential to go far in this division, if you think he can become at least a ranked fighter, it's kind of a no-brainer to pick him in this fight. I don't think he'll be just walking through Charles Johnson, but I do think, he should very definitely clearly win this fight. I'm going to take him by a decision. It's a flyweight fight. I don't really trust him to get a finish. That's all I'm going to say there. Moving along, Abdul Razak Alhassan and Cody Brundage. We are on to the main card now. Do I need to explain this? Look at Cody Brundage's facial hair. Alright, now that I've given you a second to really digest what's going on there. His performance over Bo Nichols sucked. His last fight before that, he only won by a lucky slam. Abdul Razak Alhassan has actually gotten a couple decent victories and a couple, not too poorly aging losses. But to go against, Joe Pyfer the way he did and not get knocked out, essentially, I think, there's no way I can't trust him to not be an absolute bum in Cody Brundage. So, taking him by a knockout, actually. Cody's got quite the Neanderthal facial structure, so I would not be surprised if this fight goes to a decision. But I think Abdul Razak just has a good striking edge and can deal with any wrestling threat that Cody might offer him well enough that he's just going to piece him up, hit him with some good power shots, and possibly get a good little TKO to a finish on the ground, possibly, is sort of what I'm looking at here. Maybe in the second or third rounds after Cody's gassed a bit, because I'm sure he's probably going to come out pretty fast like he did against Bo. Either that or he's just going to be so slow and so boring. All right, moving along. Julian Arosa, Christian Rodriguez. I don't know. Julian Arosa's 29-11. This guy's not very good. He's mostly here for... it's kind of like a similar situation to Peyton Talbot and Giannis Gamori. Although, I just don't think as highly of Christian Rodriguez as I do of Peyton Talbot. especially after the way he just absolutely kept missing weight at bantamweight and ruining these prospects, hype and derailing the streaks they were on just because he misses weight and can't, just, I don't even, yeah. Anyways, Christian Rodriguez, I'm going to take him by submission. This guy's more of a grappling style. Julian's not very good. He's moving up to featherweight now, so he should bring that bantamweight skill, assuming you could ever have considered him a real bantamweight. And get this one. I mean, it should be a pretty easy fight. I really don't have much to say. I don't like that Christian Rodriguez is getting such an easy opponent here. I think this dude should be put through the ringer, given what he's done to some of these high-level prospects, but so be it. We move on. Gabriel Bonfim, Anghiloa. This is an interesting little matchup right here. A little bit of a power puncher versus a bit of a submission guy. Anghiloa is not awful. Definitely not by any means. But when your best wins are AJ Fletcher and Reese McKee, there's not a lot to really say heavily in your favor other than the power and the style that you can bring. But I don't think either of those things are going to be particularly problematic for Gabriel Bonfim, especially after that most recent fight he had against Nicholas Dalby, where he lost. Dalby's been looking really good lately. I just want to say that real quick. But, I don't think he's necessarily on the level of a Dalby even. And I see Bonfim really looking to get back in there, really looking to just make a statement here, get back on track. He's still pretty fresh in his UFC career. So that Nicholas Dalby loss shouldn't set him back too far. And I really think he's just looking to get back out there, get a nice big win, and make himself look good again. You're only as good as your last fight. I'm taking Bonfim by a submission here. I don't rate Anghiloa's ground game very highly. And, Bonfim, I think, is more of the striking brother, if I'm not mistaken. I forget. But they're both Brazilian. They're both brothers. They come from the same gym. I believe he'll get the submission. I'm pretty sure, right? He's the one with the guillotines? I don't even remember. But I'm taking him by submission. That's what I'm going to say. Moving on. Crap. Is this? No. Featured fight. Featured fight. We got Drew Dober versus Gene Silva. Gene Silva just got a crazy knockout over Charles Jourdain on the last card that I was not expecting, to say the least. And very impressed me very much so. Taking this fight now 2-3 weeks later, I really like the look of that, especially since this fight is a weight class up at 155 instead of 145. I'd normally be worried about a double weight cut like that, but when it's moving up a weight class, I think the toll on the body is much less heavy, and I think it feels a lot better for them. He has some time. He can, he doesn't have to worry about staying right at that level. He can eat a bit, grow some size a bit, because he doesn't have as much to take off. Drew Dober has known about this date for a while. This was a very short notice fight for Gene Silva only. Drew Dober not as much. But, Dober didn't have an opponent he was preparing for this whole time. He just knew he was going to be fighting on that date. So, neither of these guys super particularly prepared to go against one another. But I see similar styles in big power punchers, primarily using the hands. Not the fastest of guys in terms of how often they're moving around the octagon and putting together combinations. But I think Gene Silva, this is going to be his third fight in the UFC. I think he's still looking to make a statement. Drew Dober's a bit on the older side. He's been around for a while. And I don't think he's lost any motivation. And I don't think he's really aged all that much either. I think Gene Silva's just kind of that bit younger, a bit hungrier, looking to really stamp himself, especially with a turnaround like this, trying to put that Fighting Nerds gym on the map. And I do really like what I see from him. I almost feel like he is just a little more diverse than Drew Dober. Again, that lighter weight class skill coming up from featherweight, I think means a lot. Charles Jourdain is a win that I rate pretty well. I mean, as far as unranked featherweights go, I feel like I would rate a Charles Jourdain win higher than a Drew Dober win. So, that all being said, I do take Gene Silva by a decision. I think coming up a weight class, I don't think he'll be able to just chin Dober. And I don't know if his gas tank is going to be the best, but I do think he'll be able to bank, an early first round and second round, maybe coast even the first, and then take the second and third, the way he seemed to take that first round slow against Charles Jourdain. In our co-main event, Santiago Ponzinibbio and Muslim Salikhov. Muslim Salikhov got knocked out in his last fight against Randy Brown. I don't remember what Santiago's last fight was. I'm not going to lie to you guys. But what I do remember is that lately Santiago's been performing pretty well, especially at his advanced age. He was a very good prospect back in the day before he got sick and had to take that long layoff. But even when he came back, he's fighting against guys like Alex Morono and Michel Pereira, Kevin Holland. Kevin Holland, that was his last fight, which, again, he did get knocked out in that as well. But he was pretty competitive with Holland for the most part, and he's been pretty competitive. He beat Morono, and he took Michel Pereira to a split decision. So Santiago, even in his older age, even after the illness, has been performing much better than expected and has been making these fights pretty close. Muslim Salikhov hasn't really done much to impress me in his last few fights. That Randy Brown loss, I kind of predicted that one coming, and it went even worse for him than I was expecting. He lost to Nicholas Dalby too, who has just kind of been marauding through all of these Russian fighters lately. It's kind of weird. Well, so I don't. That loss isn't like too much against him, but like his best recent wins are Fialho and Trinaldo, who's like 40 plus. Yeah. Muslim Salikhov, I think as of late has just lost his step a lot more than Ponzinibbio has. And I trust Santiago to be able to stay in the fight more, be crisper with his striking, hit a bit harder. And I'm going to take him by a decision. I wouldn't be too surprised at a Santiago knockout because he hasn't really lost all that much power. And Muslim took a hard shot from Randy in that last fight. But I'm sticking with a decision. I think he'll be able to comfortably outpoint him. I think both guys will slow down as the fight goes on, and Muslim might be able to get, one of those later rounds or one of the early rounds before, Santiago really gets into any sort of groove or really takes over by anything. But that's what I'm going with. Santiago by a decision. Finally, main event, Rose Namajunas versus Tracy Cortez. Yeah. Guys. Make sure Tracy Cortez doesn't see this video because I need to tell y'all, Rose is winning this fight. And I think she's going to finish Tracy Cortez. Tracy Cortez, I was really impressed by the way her boxing looked in her last fight. I will not lie. I was expecting a mediocre, run-of-the-mill, forgettable WMMA fight. But she really impressed me with her boxing in that fight. It looked very crisp, very clean. Landed a lot of good strikes. And, she's undefeated in the UFC in her whole UFC run. And she only has one loss. I forget where it was. I know it was before the UFC. I think it might have been to Erin Blanchfield in Invicta because I know they fought there. No, I think that's Erin Blanchfield's loss, or was her only loss. I forget what Tracy's loss is. I think it was like her debut or something. So, all things considered, she's had a pretty good come up, very good run so far. But her level of competition has just been virtually non-existent. Erin Blanchfield back in Invicta, I mean, if you thought Blanchfield's young now, she was even younger then. And her best win in the UFC is Jasmine Juda-vicious, who, like I said, is not really that incredible of a fighter. You look at like her other names are like Stephanie Egger is like the only other one that I can remember off the top of my head. Yeah, that's it. I can't remember the rest of them. And I'm pretty sure Egger was at bantamweight too. So like that doesn't even apply to this fight. So, and this is short notice for her. She was preparing to fight Miranda Maverick on the card after this one. But this is a 5-rounder main event in Denver, no less. So elevation. So I don't trust the cardio at all. Normally I think her cardio is fine, but in this situation I don't trust it at all. a massive jump up in competition. I mean, to go from not a single ranked opponent, not a single person who was ever ranked, I'm pretty sure, to now a former champion in a different division in Rose Namajunas, who is already ranked higher than her in this division too. So, yeah, Rose just has way too many credentials. On paper, I cannot possibly pick Tracy. I can't find a single reason why I would have faith in Tracy to win this fight. Other than to assume that whatever level of improvement she was able to make in between the Jasmine fight and the fight she had before that, assuming she can make a similar level of improvement between the Jasmine fight and now, she could definitely make it competitive, for about 2 rounds before the elevation and the short notice starts to get to her. And I think Rose is kind of a tough style for her too. She's better on the feet and better at grappling. I mean, Rose is just good. That Carla Esparza loss made her look bad to all of our eyes, but to come back into this division, get a close fight with Manon Fiorot where she broke her hand. It's worth noting she did break her hand in that fight. And I'm blinking on who else she fought at flyweights so far, but she had a good victory there too. And yeah, I wish I could take Tracy, but I just can't. I'm taking Rose. I'm going to say second round ground and pound, honestly, maybe third. But yeah, I think just way too big of a skill gap, way too much of a jump in competition. The elevation, the main event, short notice, it's just so many things against Tracy Cortez that even if this fight had proper announcement time, not at elevation, you took away all these extra things, I still think Rose probably finishes her. This just makes it all that clearer in my head. So, that being said, thank you guys for watching. Let me know what you guys think down in the comments, if you even care about this card. And that being said, thank you for tuning in. Stay violent.